U.S. Up to 5 individuals will be given the opportunity to provide comment to the Operations Committee. Speakers will be granted 3 minutes, and all public comments should address operations-related issues. Please note that sign-up is not permitted the day of the meeting. In addition, the chat function during our virtual meetings will not be used as a tool for gathering feedback or answering questions from the public. If you have follow-up questions or feedback and did not sign up in advance to provide them during the committee meeting, my apologies. Please send an email to the school board at bcps.k12.md.us, and the board office staff will be sure to provide you with a response. Please hold 1 second as I bring up today's agenda. Team, I'm having trouble getting into board docs. Can someone assist me? Is anyone able to tell me what is next on the agenda, as I'm having trouble
Yes.
getting to board docs?
John, can you help with the agenda?
Yes, good morning, Vice Chair. The first item on the agenda is the Comprehensive Educational Facility Master Plan, known as the CEFMP, and that will be facilitated by Maureen Gershberg.
Thank you all.
Good morning. Let me pull it up.
Good morning.
All right. Are you able to see?
Yes.
Great. All right. Good morning. My name is Maureen Gershberg. I'm the Director of Facilities Planning and Real Estate for City Schools within the Operations Department. Today, we're going to cover the Comprehensive Educational Facilities Master Plan, also known as the CEFMP. This aligns with Board Priority 3. Topics that we're going to cover today include enrollment trends and demographics, current and projected utilizations, school zones and feeders, developments, facility conditions and investments, and programmatic alignment. Some of these slides will look similar because a lot of trends are continuing. So people are having fewer kids still. We're seeing that in Baltimore City and nationwide. There's a slight uptick in the most recent recording year, but not enough to really reverse the larger trend that we've seen, and that you can obviously see here where we're previously closer to 10,000 births. So while the percentage of students that we're capturing in kindergarten 5 years later, that amount has remained steady, but the overall pot of kids has decreased. Baltimore City's population is still decreasing. Between the 2010 and 2020 census, we lost a lot of people, almost about 6% of our population. We saw that primarily in our Black communities. We lost almost 60,000 citizens within our Black communities, but our Latino population has increased dramatically. Not enough to offset the losses, but that is absolutely our growing population. We have to provide 10-year enrollment projections as part of the CEFMP. You can see we had historic highs around SY 1450, and then in 2015, the population of Baltimore City and the enrollment in Baltimore City Public Schools started decreasing. We anticipate about a 5,000 student decrease over the next 10 years, plateauing around 70,000. Here's a map so you can kind of see geographically where those losses have been occurring and then where the gains have been occurring. West Baltimore has seen a lot of loss. And then, as we're probably familiar with, South Baltimore and Southeast Baltimore, where we see our multilingual and Latino communities, have seen a lot of growth. When we look at the overall amount of change in enrollment over time, we can't think of it as just a net loss, because as you can see, those losses and those gains are not consistent throughout the city. Here's a chart just showing how that demographic breakdown has changed over time. Keep in mind, this is percentage, so the total quantity of students has actually dropped over 9,000 students. in the past 9 years or so. But you see that yellow has increased dramatically from 8% in SY 15-16 up to 19% in SY 23-24, and that's our Latino population. Versus our Black population, which was previously at 82%, has decreased to 71%. We're going to dive now into some of that growth that we've seen with our Latino population. We previously were focusing more on our multilingual learners, but it's really, when you dig into it, it was really more the Latino communities that were growing, not just specifically multilingual learners. So this year we had more of an emphasis on showing the Latino growth and not just multilingual growth. Here you can see our Latino students mapped. The majority of them are still in the Southeast, but you can see we have huge communities both in Northwest Baltimore and Falstaff, in Lakeland, Southwest, and in the Baybrook Marie G. Faring area in South Baltimore. If we dig deeper into that Southeast area, we've shown it in two areas, Southeast A, which is more central, and then Southeast B, which is closer to that Dundalk area. The top two lines on this chart show the elementary middle population of these areas, and the bottom two are the high school population. So while Southeast A still has the most students in this area, you can see it's been relatively steady between 3.5 and 4,000 since 1920. However, Southeast B, that farther area, they've had a noticeable trend upward that is continuing. And so while we acknowledge that there are definitely more students in the Southeast A, that Southeast B region is growing. And these are the types of analysis and data points that we look at as part of our facilities planning. It's interesting enough that the high school kind of remains steady even though we have that growth. We have surplused 2.7 million square feet since the beginning of the 21st Century Buildings program. The funding for the 21st Century Buildings program was one of the things that we had to commit to was surplusing 26 buildings. And so we've made a lot of headway on that. We have 3 buildings left that are called out here in, you can see the orange dots, and those are the remaining buildings on Exhibit 6, which was associated with that 21st Century MOU. We are currently using those 3 buildings for swing. So here's a slide just summarizing where we are with our major projects and swing space needs. The bottom 3 schools are staying on site. They don't require swing space, but Furley and Vanguard, they are in the Thurgood Marshall building right now. That's a building we're planning on surplusing. Commodore John Rogers is in the Southeast building. That's a building we're planning on surplusing. Frederick Douglass and then Western and then Poly are planned to occupy the Northwestern building. And once they're all done using it, we will then surplus that building. City College right now is slated to go to the University of Baltimore, and I'm going to hand it over to Allison now to talk a little bit about that.
Hello. I'm here. I wanted to give a little update. We realized that I'm Allison Perkins Cohen, Chief of Staff for City Schools. I realized that we haven't spoken in a little bit about swing space plan. So we wanted to give a little update on the swing space plan. And in fact, I think John is going to share his screen with some slides that gives a little bit more of an update on the swing space plan, because we just, in preparing for this, we realized we hadn't done that yet. As part of the CEFMP, the plan to swing to Baltimore City College will be part of that plan because it's a change in location. It's not a city schools building, so it requires a board vote. But we realized that this was an opportunity to just give an overall update on the swing space plan. Hopefully it's coming up. But generally, first I'm going to start with an update on Douglass, Poly, and Western, because again, we haven't spoken about it in a while, but we've been able to really, the swing space situation for all 4 of the the high schools that are swinging is much better than we had originally planned. It is challenging for a school system to have 4 schools, 4 large high schools that are swinging all very close to each other and finding a place to put them. So we've been working really hard to try to figure out how to make it minimize the disruption for schools as much as possible and have that plan be more, have spaces that are better for our young people. And I think we're in a much better place than we originally were. Next slide.
Excuse me, Allison, you're my big screen. I have a small screen with the actual slides. I'm not sure if that was intentional.
Shouldn't be. Thank you for telling me. I can't see what you see.
Okay, there we go.
Is that better? Oh, thank
Yes.
you, Vice Chair. Okay, so next slide. So we're just gonna, I think I can go through these fairly quickly because Maureen just went through it, but just wanted to remind everybody of the plan. So of how these buildings are moving. So because of the way the construction schedules played out for Douglas and Western and Poly, we're able to swing all three of those schools through the Northwestern building. That was not the original plan. Those three schools were going to be in three different buildings, two of which were middle school buildings, which don't work nearly as well for a high school. But because just the way the construction schedule laid out, as well as the fact that the plan now for Western and Poly is to do that building, their shared campus, to do it in halves, so that one swings out while that side of the building is done, and then the other. So I'm just going to walk you through that quickly. So Douglas first will swing in the fall to the Northwestern building, and they will be there in this coming school year 24-25 and 25-26, and able to return to their modernized Frederick Douglass building in 26-27. That's a rendering of the current rendering of what the modernized Frederick Douglass building will look like. Next slide. Then immediately following them, Western then will swing out of their side of the Poly Western building and into Northwestern building. They will be there also just for 2 years. And so this is a big improvement too. Initially, we thought that these larger high schools, Western and Poly, would have to be out of their schools for 3 years or possibly 4 under a different scenario, which is, again, a lot of time out of a high schooler's time in school. So we were really trying to minimize that. And so by doing this swapping out of one at a time, each Western and Poly only have to be out for 2 years. So Western will swing to the Northwestern building first from 26-27 and 27-28. And then in 28-29, they will return to their modernized side of the building. Next slide. Then immediately following that, 28-29 and 29-30, Poly will swing out to the Northwestern building, and then they will return to their modernized side of the building in school year 30-31. In order to do this sequence, it is a little more complicated on construction. It would be easier on our contractors, certainly, to have both students out, both sides of the school out at the same time, but it's not easier on students and is more disruptive to their education. And so we'll have to do things like HVACs work in the winter, in the summer, and then on evenings and weekends in order to make this work. But we think it's very workable, and it's a much better situation for students. So next slide. So this means that all three of those schools can go to the Northwestern building, which, again, this is a comprehensive high school space. So it means that there's science labs. It means that we have fields that they can use. It means that there's a pool, cafeteria that's made for high school students, a library. So all these amenities that were not the case in the middle schools in Chinquapin and Garrison. Those were middle schools, so they weren't going to have those types of amenities for high school. So that's a great improvement. Next slide. So here's just a list of some of the things that we're planning to improve to Northwestern. There is a fair bit of improvement we need to make to Northwestern. There is a fair bit of expense in readying swing spaces for these schools. But one big benefit of this too is that instead of spreading our investment out across originally 4 buildings, so the 3 for Frederick Douglass, Poly, and Western, and the building for City, we're now spreading it across 2 buildings. So that reduces our cost. But still, there's a lot we have to do to this building and to UB to make them work. So there's the There's things like AC. This building does not have air conditioning, so we have to air condition it. We have to fix the locker rooms. We have to repair the pool to make it usable. So there's a lot of critical investments. And then each that building will be also some of the specific spaces that are needed for the programming in Douglas, Western, and Poly we have to make. So like the law courtroom, the JROTC classrooms, those things we'll have to make in order to have the school facility fit the program of the school that's it's housing at that time. Next slide. And then, so the University of Baltimore, and again, this is part of the CEFMP because this is one of our schools swinging to a different space. So the board has to take action on that. So we've been working with the UB on the plan. We're very grateful to President Schmoke and to the leadership at the University of Baltimore, who's really worked with us to come up with a plan that works for City to swing there. And again, City was slated to swing also to a middle school. So it was not an ideal situation for a school. And this is a much better opportunity for our young people to be on a college campus. And so all 4 high schools will be in space that's much more appropriate for high schools. And so we're really gratified by that. Next slide. So the plan for City is that they will start in the City College building and then in the year 25-26. So that's a year behind where we originally were, though I think we've updated the board on that, but 25-26 they'll move into the UB. They will be there in through 25-26 and then 26-27 and 27-28. So it's actually 3 years that they will be at the UB, and then they will return to the castle once it's Castle on the Hill once it's renovated in school year 28-29. Next slide. So some of the amenities that this is a collegiate space. So they will have the kind of lecture halls that you see in colleges in some of those classrooms. They will have access to a collegiate library, so they'll be able to use that. They have it's a collegiate gym, so it's a real a full-size gym. The one at Thurgood Marshall was a middle school gym, so it wasn't really going to work very well. There also are the City College is already working with the UB on their early college initiatives program to try to create relationships between the school and the college for early college access for young people. And the lease details just are that we will rent the space for $1 a year. The utilities, the water, City College will pay for the increased usage amount for the water, and similarly for utilities for the business center will be in 2 buildings, the business center and the academic center. For the business center, we will not be charged for the utilities there, but for the academic center will pay for the usage of any additional usage on a square footage basis, our proportional share of that space. And then UB will be responsible for maintenance with the exception of the everyday wear and tear from the school using the space. Next. These are some of the construction needs at the UB that also needs some construction. So there are about 40 classrooms there already that can be used, but City College needs a total of 70. So there will be additional 30 classrooms that need to be built that include science labs and art classrooms and then some general classrooms. We have to build a kitchen there. There is a space for students to eat, but there is no kitchen, so we need to build that. We'll have to add some security cameras and key card access points, Wi-Fi, and then lighting and HVAC so that the HVAC works in those now new 30 classrooms that we're building. So that's it for that portion. I want to pause there before we go on to answer any questions. The funding for both the renovations for the Northwestern building and for the UB is part of the supplemental appropriation moved over into the capital funds. And it's the same pot that will close any remaining gap that we have in the construction program for those high schools and swing space. So we are going to try to minimize the cost of swing space as much as we can for those 2 properties, but there are investments we need to make to both Northwestern and to the UB in order to house these facilities.
Respectfully, Allison, I would ask that you all complete your presentation by the allotted time so that we can move forward with Q&A.
Yeah. Yes. So turn it back to Maureen.
All right. So as I previously mentioned, we have certain swing spaces that are planned for surplus, including the Northwestern building. Building utilization impacts capital funding. We need a minimum of 60% utilization at a site to be able to fund capital projects. And just in general, we have a lot less autonomy than other jurisdictions because we're so dependent upon state funding for projects. So utilization is it has a large impact on what we do and what we're able to do. This chart shows the number of seats overall compared to our utilization. And so while we have some additional seats coming online in the next several years because of some major projects in the queue, that 5,000 student loss that I mentioned previously does impact that overall utilization. So right now we're at 87%, but it is projected to decrease. This gives a breakdown of that building type and how much that occupies within our overall portfolio. About 60% of our portfolio is elementary and elementary middle buildings. So I said on the previous slide, we have a district utilization this year of 87%. 86% is the ideal, but so while we look good on paper, we're very close to 86%. It's actually, there's some very large discrepancies between the different building types. So you can see here, we have a shortfall of almost 5,000 seats, over 5,000 seats at the elementary and elementary middle levels, but we have an excess of 3,800 seats at the high school, at the secondary level. This shows just geographically what that utilization looks like for the elementary and elementary middle zones. Just want to call your attention specifically to West Baltimore, where we also saw those large losses in enrollment previously on the other slide. Planning for schools in Baltimore City is difficult. We have a very large out-of-zone population, even within our K-5. The out-of-zone rate for this school year was 46%. So the map here shows by school zone, the darker green shows the higher out-of-zone rates per elementary and elementary middle zone. And that's not even talking about middle and high, where we have just choice kind of across the board. And so just when we think about where seats are needed, it's not just where there's growing populations, because we also know that some schools, the area itself might be losing population, but because of maybe a school's reputation or a strong leader, we know that sometimes that can be a draw to students from outside the zone. So we have to balance a lot of factors when we look at seat demand and need. New developments don't always mean new students. That's one of the pushbacks that always come up when we talk about the number of seats that we need. The two big ones on here, we'll just talk about those real quick. The Westport one, we have a student yield calculator, and it takes historic numbers of students in a specific housing type in a specific area and estimates the number of kids and new development in that area of that type might yield. And so with Westport, we're taking that one with a grain of salt because the housing going there is so dramatically different. Like the high-end row homes that are going in are so dramatically different than the historic row homes of the Westport area. So we're taking that one with a grain of salt. We don't think it's actually going to yield over 400 students, but if so, Westport has plenty of space. The Perkins Somerset Old Town development, that will come to fruition because those students were previously there. They were displaced as part of the PSO redevelopment, and then they're going to be coming back. And the new City Springs building will be able to accommodate them. I do want to point out just those other developments in that far southeast and southeast. As we mentioned, we know that area is growing. We often look at the amount of money that we need compared to what we are funded. So if you look at the combined maintenance and capital budget needed for a portfolio of our size, there's a shortfall of $365 million every year. So when we make decisions around major projects or what sites need what projects, it's a constant balance between the limited resources that we have and the need. This is a summary of the capital funding pots of money that we have. And actually, I'll go into greater detail with this in, I think, a couple of weeks with the CIP presentation. But we have annual funds, we have limited funds, and then we have one-time funds. We are making great strides in getting more students in renovated buildings. And by the end of the high school plan, we should have almost 50% of our students in new or renovated buildings. A lot of the data that we've shown, the analysis, we're not just taking a snapshot of that and putting it in a document and submitting it to the state once a year. We use that data and those that analysis year round to help make district decisions. An example of that is the map you see here that we created to help support ONI as part of the annual review this year and the merger of BDJ and Augusta Fells. So we use our data to help inform annual review recommendations, looking at our capital funding, programmatic movements, and long-term CTE plans. So again, to summarize, it's not just a snapshot document. It is an ongoing process where we're constantly looking at data and making sure that we're applying lessons learned and any new information and trends to upcoming decisions. And before I wrap it up, I just want to put in a plug for our dashboards. We have 7 interactive maps along with PDFs of the past CEFMP available at this site here. You can also access it through the City Schools website if you do a search for buildings and then scroll about halfway down the page. And so here you can see the school demographics dashboard. You pick the school in the upper right-hand corner and you can get a breakdown of the school. Any questions?
Yes, I have 2. Madam Chair, please let me know if I'm slowing the meeting down by asking my questions, because I tend to do that sometimes. I guess the first question is, we look at the capacity utilization. There are requirements in the, when we look at the 30, the schools, I guess the 21 schools in terms of the 21st century. We look at 21st century. 21st century has a requirement that the schools have to have a certain capacity level. If we're losing population and capacity is going down, and also we plan to bring on another 10 schools in 2030, what's that do to the non-21st century schools? Because we have a requirement to have a certain capacity at the 21st century schools.
Yeah, so we don't actually have a capacity requirement. We had a district-wide utilization target for SY 1920 that we met, and that was 86%. We do try to ensure that we are maintaining healthy utilizations at our brand new schools. Again, kind of targeting at 86%. And actually, as part of annual review, when we look at merging schools, we look in mind at like adjacent schools that might be brand new that have space. So we are constantly looking at where there's space, if there's maybe an early learning special education program that could be accommodated because there's extra space at a school. So we absolutely do look to make sure we are having robust utilization rates to the extent possible at those brand new schools. The majority of the new schools coming online, as you know, a number of them are high schools, which are different than the majority of the 21st century buildings, which were elementary, middle. And then also those new projects coming online, a lot of them are intended to address existing overutilization. So Armistead Gardens, Marie G. Faring. Pearlie's a little bit different, but again, those are intended to handle those populations that are already there. They're not necessarily going to be attracting populations from outside their zone, specifically also because Marie G. Faring and Armistead Gardens, those are very high Latino populations, and we find those kids don't travel. They prefer to stay in their community. So we're not really concerned with those future schools decreasing the utilization of their adjacent schools.
Okay, my other question is to Allison. We talked about this in, I guess, a committee meeting, not a committee meeting, but executive session about 3 months ago about the whole idea of equity and fairness. Sometimes people get those mixed up, and I do too. I guess if I'm a kid coming to City College, why would I not want to go to City College as a freshman next year saying, I'm going to get the benefit of being at University of Baltimore. I'm going to get the benefit of the Lyric. I'm going to get the benefit of the early college initiatives. So what can we, what can and are we doing for Douglas, Poly, Western, at Northwestern to make the kids saying, hey, I feel comfortable here as much as my buddies do over at University of Baltimore.
Yeah. So I think one of the things we did was make sure that, and really tried to work on the process to make sure that we could have all three of those schools swing through Northwestern. Northwestern is a comprehensive high school. It served as a high school for Baltimore City for many, many years. It has all the amenities of a comprehensive high school. It is sized to fit all three of those schools. It's actually a little bit large for Douglas. It's the right size for Poly. So it fits all three of those schools, again, to have a pool. So it has some of the things that there are other things we have to work out for the UB. We don't have field space, so we're going to have to figure out how to get field space for City because there's no field space there. There's no pool there. City has not had a pool because their home pool doesn't work either. So they have an existing relationship. We'll have to get students over to the pool. So there's trade-offs in both these situations. It is hard to keep high schools whole when you have to, you can't renovate a comprehensive high school when students are in there. So you do have to move students, and finding space appropriate for all high schools to move at the same time is a challenge. But one, for Northwestern, will be building the CTE spaces that they need. So the specific things that they need, the aerospace, their aeronautics lab, I think that's what it's called. Cindy, tell me if I have it wrong. For Poly will be built. The law classes that Douglas needs for their program will be built there. So you're starting with a comprehensive high school that has everything that a comprehensive high school should, like the school they're coming from, and then you're adding the programming that's specific to each of those programs, Poly, Western, and Douglas, so that they won't feel as much disruption. You can't eliminate disruption in a construction program. You just can't. But what we always try, one of our values we try to, is minimizing disruption as much as possible. And I think this plan for all four of these high schools does the best job of that. I would also say that, yeah, City will be at the UB, but they'll be there for 3 years. Douglas, Poly, and Western will only be out of their home building for 2 years because the way we constructed it. So that's a benefit for them too, that they'll only be at the swing space for 2 years, and then they'll be back at their new renovated space more quickly.
So I should be okay if I'm a student, knowing that I'm going to get the services and they're going to be fair across the board.
That's right. And our schools all have access to early college, and so does City currently. This is just, they'll be in proximity, so they'll try to build that more deeply with UB. They don't always work with UB currently. So, but early college should be not unique to City. All of our schools do have access to early college programming.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, Madam
Allison,
Chair.
I from first learning about this opportunity, I was very unsettled. This is a tremendous opportunity for the school community and for the system to partner in such a unique way. But also, Commissioner Reed has alluded to just the matter around equity. And so my questions will be centered around that. First, I would be curious from a cost perspective, what would be the comparative analysis to making those investments in a current swing space as opposed to making these one-time investments at University of Baltimore? And I think what's really concerning to me is that we would make such a significant investment in a space that's already planning to be renovated when we conclude our time there. And so I'm very unsettled with that. But what is that cost analysis between the two spaces?
Yeah. So the costs for we're still working on the costs, I have to say, because we're in the early stages of trying to figure out exactly what what we need to do. So these are all rough
Can we
estimates for
pause
both.
that then? So if we are approving the CMFMP, if we're approving the CEFMP, we don't know the costs.
But we're giving you the high end estimate. So we're using conservative estimates for both UB and for Northwestern to, to make sure that we're covered. But we're being conservative in terms of giving the high estimate. So the high estimate for the UB is between $9 and $10 million for renovations to that space. The high estimate, or this is probably not the full, because the challenge with Northwestern is we don't know exactly yet. We design the swing space for the recipient of that swing space. So what we're doing for Douglas will need to be changed a little bit when Western swings in, and will need to be changed a little bit when Poly swings in. We don't have fleshed out Western and Poly as much on Northwestern, but at this point, our estimate for the Northwestern building is about $25 million.
Specifically to the UB space. So if we did renovative work at where city, the alternative was for
Oh,
city
yes.
to
Thurgood
swing
Marshall.
this. Yes.
Yes. Thurgood Marshall, the estimate, again, that was early stages. We didn't go too far down it because we started working on the UB, was about $12 million. And so both Thurgood Marshall, and so while those investments are going to the UB and then it will remain with the UB, in the case of Thurgood Marshall and Northwestern, Thurgood Marshall for sure was going to be surplus back to the city after city left it. In the case of Northwestern, I have communicated to the community that if we are fortunate enough to get additional resources to continue improvements to renovations to facilities, if we get more capital dollars to do more schools after the high school plan, which it is my deep hope that we will, and we will continue to advocate that, because our original 10-year plan was that all schools need to be renovated. So we hope we will. If we do, then I think we would potentially keep the Northwestern building because it's a good swing space for high schools. It's a very good swing space for high schools. If we don't, it's expensive to keep empty buildings vacant. So then we would surplus it back to the city.
I think we keep transitioning Northwestern. I'm most curious about Thurgood Marshall and UB, this comparative analysis in
Yes.
that space.
Mhm.
And I'm stuck there from an equity perspective, that I know that this year specifically, there were school communities across our portfolio that had to make very challenging decisions as it relates to security cameras and hall monitors. Like, we're looking to put additional staff in these spaces. We're looking to build additional classrooms at this space, where we have no autonomy around what happens after our students transition out. And so the biggest kind of social capital that we have around swing spaces is, as they are needed, we can surplus or not. That is not the luxury that we have here. And I think this is a tremendous opportunity if it's scalable. And I don't see that. And with such a significant dollar amount, I'm very much unsettled in supporting it. I am. I know that has been a challenge across our system. That's something that community has lifted so much, specifically around security. And we're making those upgrades to this particular space.
Mhm.
What is the line of sight for this approach?
Yeah, again, you can't do high school renovations without having swing space. That's just a fact. They don't work. Again, we've been able to do because there's a split building at Poly Western, we're able to do half and half, but a large school, a comprehensive school, has to be off the site at any one time that we're doing that facility, because you just can't do high schools that way. And so when you have a swing space, you have to make investments in that swing space. That is a fact. And again, the investments we would have had to make to Thurgood Marshall would have been more than we're anticipating that they are to UB, and it would not have been as quality space. The space would not have been, it would have been middle school space still. It would have been much more inadequate for students and would not have supported the learning as well as we can at the UB for cheaper.
That's my question that we haven't gotten to. What is that cost?
Oh, I said, I'm sorry if you didn't hear. We said our estimate for Thurgood Marshall, our early estimate, again, we didn't get very far, it was $12 million. And
12. And what are we putting into UB?
9 to 10 million.
9 to 10 million for one-time consumption. There's no scalability opportunity to use for other school communities.
I mean, this is an agreement for City College, but again, that's true for Thurgood Marshall too. Thurgood Marshall was going to go back to the city afterwards.
Oh, the difference there is, one of the biggest arguments we get from community is that we leave behind these shells of a building that can't be used afterwards. That's one of the biggest issues we hear from community is we leave these buildings, we surplus them back to the city and they're unusable. And so we could, obviously dance around that. I will say, in moving forward, and I'll yield to Commissioner Muhammad to see if he has any feedback. But knowing that when the board approves, consideration for the board to approve the CMFMP, I'm not aligned in this moment. I'm not aligned. Commissioner Muhammad?
I appreciate it, Commissioner. I think my concern really lies in the place of just equity, the opportunity for our students to be on a college campus would be amazing. It's just, I think I have concerns with if and how we're engaging what we're receiving from community. When we look at the possibility of inequities that are already felt between different high schools, and for this particular high school to have access to their swing space being a college campus is a concern that I hope that we've already touched with community and community is okay with it. That's where my concern lies. I would say that the consideration financially uh, of the 10 million versus the 12 million that could be spent in a space that we own. I appreciate the commissioner highlighting that. That's good insight. I would love to know more about the potential of how we could use Thurgood Marshall after, if we intend to continue to have swing space. Is it viable for us to hold on to, similar to what we're trying to do with the Western space? So just your perspective on those concerns.
Yeah. So the Thurgood Marshall building, as the city has a plan for it, so we had to ask, there's something that the mayor wants to do with the Thurgood Marshall building, so we had to kind of talk to the city hall about using it for swing space. At the time when we proposed it, it was the only option we had. Again, finding space for large high schools to swing is very challenging. And so it was one of the few we had. So it was supposed to be surplused earlier. We asked for a delay because of this need, what we at the time thought was a need for swing space. But the city very much has a plan for that space and wants it back after we're done.
What is the plan?
I think it's a rec center, I believe. Cindy, can you help my memory? I think it's a rec
Yes,
center
it's-
that they
it's a rec
plan to
center.
build there.
A
Yes.
large rec facility.
Thank you.
And with regards to the UB, the use of UB and the financial commitment there, and the insight that we've received from community, particularly regarding just inequities around our high schools, and how I think leaning into what Commissioner Reed stated, there are other high schools that don't have access, will not have access to a college campus, just everything that a college campus would give our young people access to. And even though we're going to make an effort to make sure that those things are replicated in our other swing space, have we engaged community in that? Because it really has the opportunity to push into inequities that our high schools may be perceived to have.
So we have engaged the communities of the high schools that are swinging in terms of discussions of swing space. And we've engaged the community overall about the high school plan. The reason these high schools were picked for renovations in the first place was because of the condition of their facilities. These are the facilities that are the most expensive to maintain. They had the most expensive repair costs each year because of the condition of Douglas, Western Poly, and City. So that's the reason they were selected. They're some of our largest high schools. As I said, it's very expensive to both renovate their new space as well as to swing them. but also very necessary. City, Poly and Western have had HVAC challenges that have made students miss school for long periods of time. And keeping those HVAC systems that are very outdated running has been a real challenge. And so there was real urgency to do renovations to those buildings. At the time, some of these things have happened, but at the time, when we first were talking about the high school plan, my memory I remember Poly Western better, but City had similar challenges. Poly Western, just for systems improvements of roofs, windows, and doors, HVAC, was in the neighborhood of 75 million, I think, that it needed at the time. We, on an annual basis from the state for all of our CIP, for the entire system, get $27 million a year. So there was no opportunity to do these large high schools absent an opportunity like the Built to Learn Act. We needed to take that opportunity in order to do these high schools, and these were the ones that had the largest annual costs in terms of repairs. And so that's why they were selected. Then swinging them, they're some of our largest high schools, so swinging them has been a real challenge. We were prepared to swing them into the Thurgood Marshall building, the Chinquapin building, and the Garrison building. Douglas was going to Garrison, Western was going to Chinquapin, both middle schools, and City was going to Thurgood Marshall. As we started to have those conversations, those school communities expressed concerns about swinging into middle school spaces. Again, in the end, these buildings need to be built. And so we needed to swing folks somewhere because you can't do these much needed repairs without having a place for them to swing. But in the course of those conversations, we really looked at the construction schedule and tried to think innovatively about what we could do differently to mitigate the disruption for Poly Western and Douglas, and just by sequencing the Poly Western separately, that gave us this ability to put all of them through Northwestern, a comprehensive high school, which is just a huge improvement. And at the same time, when we spoke to the community, President Schmoke was at the community meeting with parents when we talked about swinging to Thurgood Marshall, when parents were raising concerns about being in middle school. And at that time, graciously offered that the UB could be a location for City because of some of the spaces that they have are used more at night and more available during the day. So made that offer for City. We started exploring the conversation with him, and for the last year or so have been working on exploring what that could look like and how it would work and what spaces we would use. It was an offer specific to City, as President Schmoke is an alum of City, and so that was the conversation. And then at the same time, while we were doing that, we worked on this, trying to figure out a better plan for the other three schools, and we're able to figure out a way to have them all swing through. The swing space we have that is the best swing space for a high school is by far Northwestern, and it's a comprehensive high school made to house high schools of that size.
So Allison, the approach around the security upgrades, the additional hall monitors, the security cameras, the updated badging systems and such, what is the scalability across the system? Like, what's line of sight into us offering that and providing those resources for additional school communities?
So, all schools have a certain number of hall monitors. They have a certain amount of security cameras and so on. When you're in a swing space, then the difference on the UB is that it's a shared space. So there are some spaces where there are faculty and students for the UB that are there as well. So we needed hall monitors to make sure that we're able to keep our students separate from UB staff and students, and that's why we need that. We intentionally knew that swing space has expenses. There are expenses to being in a swing space for all these schools, so we intentionally put money aside for swing space costs that would be different than the typical cost, and for the close the hole in the construction for these two programs, because we were anticipating this.
So my question is specifically targeted to the existing schools in our portfolio. What will be the approach to provide those same accommodations to the schools that have existing and have had historical security issues?
So, I mean, we have a security plan that we've brought to the board about putting weapons detection systems in our buildings, about we have climate work that we do with our schools. So we have that across the school. a swinging to a space that's a shared space is different. And so you have to treat it in the way that you would treat something that's different. We do have to put a different staffing considerations in place to figure out how to make that work. That's not the same as a school that has its own unique site. Then you're focusing on the perimeter, the security cameras in that site, the entrances. And so those are the things that we focus on for our existing schools and will continue to.
So again, I will share, I'm not aligned with this point here. Just this doubles down on why I'm not aligned. This is something that school communities have over year have asked for. And that I cannot, in my right conscience, support this for one school community when we've had many school communities asking for these same resources. The same exact things. So thank you for the presentation. We can transition to the next one. I know that we're significantly over on the schedule.
Mhm. Yeah, please let us know if there's additional information we can provide. We're happy to.
Sorry, Commissioner Reed and Commissioner Mohammed. Can somebody tell me the next agenda item? My apologies.
Yes, Madam Vice Chair, the next item is policy FKA waiver for Great Kids Farm annual fundraiser, and that would be facilitated by Greg Gamble.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Good morning, everyone. Let me share my
Morning.
screen real quick. Yes, this is a waiver request from the Friends of Great Kids Farm. They are the nonprofit funding partner for the Baltimore City Public Schools Great Kids Farm. They are requesting to have their annual fundraiser, which will be held at the farm, and they're requesting a waiver so they can serve alcohol. This would be a 2-hour event that would showcase the farm, give tours to the guests. As part of the event, they will prohibit anyone from bringing outside alcohol into the event. All of the alcohol will have been donated or purchased in advance of the event. The alcohol will be served by certified bartenders. They will purchase a 1-day liquor license. They will require all attendees to show proof, and those who are 21 and over will receive a wristband. They will have plenty of non-alcoholic options. They will have access to alternative means of transportation for just to get home, Uber, Lyft, or cabs. And anyone who appears to be intoxicated will not be served. As a part of this event, we will have 2 school police officers on site the entire time for security, and the group will be required to purchase a certificate of liability insurance that will cover the liability for the event. And does anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much, Greg. Just as a matter of record, is that a $1 million certificate of insurance?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Mohammed, any questions on this item?
None here. Thank you.
No, none here.
Greg, I think that's it.
Okay, good. Thank you.
My board docs is working good again. Thank you all. Thank you, Jonathan. We will now
You're
prepare for the employee evaluation update.
Good morning. Everybody hear me
Morning.
okay?
Yes.
Hi. It is great to see all of you. My name is Jessie Papia. I'm the Director of Employee Effectiveness. And so I'll be providing the update on our evaluations and some of the key priority work this year and how it is setting us up for a really big year in school year 24-25. I apologize for just my clarification. I have my slides ready, and should I drive? Does usually somebody else? My apologies for the technical question.
Jesse, you're welcome to drive, or I can do it, whatever is easiest for you. Just let me know.
That's great. Thank you. I will share my full screen. Hopefully that helps everything to be nice and big for folks. I'm using the PDF version, so please let me know if it's a little bit hard to see. But again, my name is Jessie, Director of Employee Effectiveness, providing an update to the board today on our employee evaluation work this year. There are three key things that I will be highlighting for our commissioners today and for the Operations Committee. One of them is that a big step this year, again, setting us up for school year 24-25, is that we've been continuing several years worth of work on the development of a redesigned evaluation for district leaders and those who support schools, that we are preparing for a new electronic evaluation platform that will be in use next year as part of the broader AMP project, and that we are planning for how we will build capacity for more meaningful performance feedback, and just recognizing that there will be some technical and adaptive needs and spaces that folks will need support. First thing I just wanted to name here is that when it comes to employee evaluations, we understand and value that people are at the core of education. It starts with our students and communities, and they are served by high impact engaged leaders from a wide range of seats all across the district, in schools and here at district office. Evaluations are one tool, they are one opportunity to help us with reinforcing expectations, making sure that people who are working with our students and communities feel seen, understand where they're doing well, and how we can support them and continue to grow their impact and excelling and staying with city schools. With that in mind as our why for employee evaluations and all the work that we do around that space, there are several areas of alignment with board strategic priorities. And in addition to the first two priorities, I just want to name that because of the strong emphasis this year for our team in getting the district ready for a shift in electronic platform, we really have seen ourselves leaning into serving the priority for the board in areas 3 and 5, thinking about high quality modern facilities and resources and making sure there's equal access to this to ensure success. There is a lot of text here, and what I really just wanted to highlight for folks is that we are continuing the development of a redesigned evaluation for district leaders. This has been many years coming. I have been in this role in this team for 11 years. And I have consistently heard feedback that there is a need for improvement in the tools and resources for folks at district office and the ways in which they receive feedback and the ways in which we describe performance. I'm so excited that after several years, we're going to be able to begin the rollout where folks will experience a different evaluation next year, and we'll continue to see that rollout beyond school year 24-25. This redesigned evaluation is intended to be more balanced and include a multi-measure view of how folks are performing, and it is deeply informed by stakeholder engagement and feedback. Again, kind of more anecdotally, since I've been in this seat, and forms that have existed very much predating me, but really we leaned in over the last 3 years to be more deliberate in the gathering and analysis of feedback research in order to inform our development and design. For the evaluations of district leader staff, and again, so often we've really, and understandably so, really leaned into the design, the work, the implementation of teacher and school leader evaluations. We cannot lose sight of the important context and work that occurs at district office and the way in which it establishes the parameters that our schools can thrive in and get the resources and support that they need. Okay, so understanding that importance, we have a lot of, things on our mind as we consider what our desired future state is as we roll out this new evaluation structure. We want this to be more balanced. We want this to have multiple measures, different ways of considering impact and performance. We want to make sure that we are deliberately building in opportunities and structures for more meaningful feedback. We want this to better serve and support employee development in role and into future roles. Understanding that there is a strong value in having alignment across district, school, and classroom evaluations as we are each, though in different ways, serving our students. And also thinking about other structural things that are in place, including that with GBCA, we're thinking about how we are considering how we are compensating, and there's financial recognition and hopes for retention of high performing staff, and wanting to make sure that that's connected to meaningful measures of performance. So as a design concept, I mentioned multi-measure, more balanced, and that alignment with school and classroom evaluation, things that have been in place since 13-14 and up to today. And so for our district leaders, what we are seeing is the opportunity for a 360 feedback survey on people leadership. This would be only for eligible folks who are supervisors of large enough teams. But I'm deeply excited about the ability to have team members provide feedback on their experience of the people leadership of their manager as part of an assessment of and an understanding of that manager's performance. It's a huge opportunity for reflection and a really valuable data source that often goes untapped. We also have a district leadership framework and rubric aligning with 4 tiers, describing evaluation from ineffective to highly effective, and leaning into some of the feedback that we've had from a district office work group and outside research partner. And then a data, kind of a goal achievement component where we can measure impact through the achievement of goal, making progress toward work-aligned goals. And we will be really leaning into the development and piloting of that structure next year. A key takeaway here is just to say, again, we have done this work more formally, grounded in engagement of stakeholders going back to school year 21-22, so over multiple years. Last year, I was able to provide an update to the committee and the board around our 360 feedback survey, the design and pilot. We did that, and over 350 surveys were completed as part of that pilot, a lot of lessons learned. And this year, you just see this work accelerating and our tapping into and engaging folks across district seats really accelerating as well. We've had a cross-office work group prioritizing and researching standards for that district leader rubric I mentioned. We've had several feedback opportunities on that rubric. We're in the midst of a pilot of that rubric with folks across seats. And for this 360 feedback survey, we've gone from a pilot last year to a field test where over 2,000 people have received survey invitations and information on how to engage. Now, our goal is that folks are engaged, they are part in various seats in district office, are engaged and are part of this development process, that they are aware of the redesign work. I will not say that it will be perfect, and we are again trying to consider how we broaden our outreach. But some of what we have done today includes district-wide emails, having an FAQ. In any of our survey field tests, individualized outreach, again, to over 2,000 folks. We've included information about the broader redesign and a link to that FAQ or frequently asked questions resource. We've been able to, again, kind of set the stage for folks with rubric feedback invites. We've engaged with our bargaining unit partners several times since the end of last year and into this year. And we've also made sure that school leaders are up to date because these are folks who are serving them, and school leaders are involved in that 360 feedback process as they give feedback on their ILED's performance through the last year's pilot, this year's field test, and then moving forward. One of the things I'm really excited about is what we're hearing from folks. Again, oftentimes with evaluation, there can be a space of anxiety. Folks hold this very personally and closely because it's an assessment of their work as a professional. And it is a place where they're really hoping to get feedback and support for how they move forward. And so the feedback that we're getting has been letting us know we're heading in the right direction. You see a quote here from one of our work group members as they're reviewing the draft rubric from the external research partner who kind of like took all this feedback, has given us something to react to. And just again, hearing that this allows for an assessment of impact and overall effective evaluation of their body of work, seeing that there is fairness here and that it's, is able to address areas of performance that may not be seen or valued or spoken to in the current evaluation. The next large body of work we've had, so also impacting folks in school year 24-25, but a lot of groundwork in this year, is the fact that as part of the broader AMP project, there will be a new, more modern electronic evaluation platform for all employee evaluation tasks to be completed. So we're shifting from our current Oracle-based system, often called OPMS, into a new, more modern platform for next year. It will be more efficient, more integrated, and more nimble. And we really have the opportunity for folks to see this investment in resource to make the evaluation steps more efficient so that more time and work is given to the reflection and to the feedback. That is where time should be spent for a manager and for their employee. It should not be on navigating technical systems as much as possible. Right. So we had several years, engaged from the beginning with AMP around identifying, the platform that could meet all of our employee self-service, manager self-service, human capital, payroll and finance needs. And as we just, went through that process, we learned that we did need something a little more targeted for the evaluation of educational staff and folks in school districts. So we went through a separate RFI process, and we were able to kick off in December. We've been moving at a very accelerated rate once we have that contract in place. The vendor has been on site, including this week, and we're also giving a first look opportunity, inviting actual end users to test out the system and what we've had set up and have been testing so far, so that they can get some initial experience and exposure and give us feedback while we're still in the development and refinement work with the vendor. We're really aiming for the first kind of more official kickoff of training and support in August, leaning into the opportunity that Operations Institute will provide to support our school leaders and building from there. As I alluded to before, but I want to be really explicit, and as part of our goals, we are working so that all employees will continue to have their evaluation tasks completed electronically. That is the case today. It did take us several years to get all of our staff who are eligible for evaluation into OPMS. And we want to make sure we hit the ground running in school year 24-25, that everyone continues to have an electronic evaluation record. It is for the benefit of the district, for their managers, and for the employees themselves, that there's always going to be that record and access. We are working with the vendors so that while we are shifting systems, it is not as though everything is perceived or is experienced as lost from historical evaluation data. So while there is a broader data retention strategy for AMP in general, for the employee evaluations in particular, we're working with our vendor so that some of the more recent annual evaluation records can be moved over and can exist in the new platform for employees and their supervisors to access. We will be doing this in a bit of a phase-in approach, but we really want to make sure that, again, folks are in the new platform, but they can run historical records. They can access their historical annual evaluation reports if they need them for something like certification, for example. We're really excited about being more efficient, fewer clicks, and leveraging some of the more modern functions, which include employees can self-reflect directly in the platform, observers, where right now they are typing till their fingers are nubs on a Word document in various other places, and kind of like things that they have made themselves to make it work. And instead, they can type directly into this platform. They can script. They can tag it to the rubric. It can organize information. And again, we're trying to remove some of the effort and the work that is going into more technical pieces of conducting an evaluation, when we really want people to focus again on gathering evidence, reflection, talking about next steps. And in addition, we've got thousands of teachers who are engaged in the student learning objective process, all of our principals and assistant principals as well. And right now they are exporting data from one student system to put it into another for this key component of their evaluation. And instead, we're working with our new vendor so that those student-facing systems can speak to one another and student rosters can pull right in. Always, again, trying to find ways to minimize work for our end user. Again, just to get us here quickly, we want to make sure we're building awareness and interest. You see, again, we've been leveraging district-wide platforms for communication. We had a district-wide naming contest. It launched in April. We had over 50 all safe for work naming entries, and we are letting our winner know today that they won. And so we will have that to announce to the field. But again, wanting to have a platform name that is not just the vendor name, not an acronym that may or may not speak to folks, but was something that was created by a city schools employee for city schools employees to use and kind of like feel connected to. We have our May 1st look, again, engaging with our bargaining unit partners and finding ways to inform our school leaders and district-wide staff so folks are aware that this is coming. And finally, really kind of connecting to both of those key big bodies of work that I do just want to say are also in addition to ensuring this year's evaluations are implemented and that things are in place, and we continue to ensure that this year's evaluations are conducted and people are getting feedback. So while all of that continues to happen, these were two initiatives on top of that are again really going to help us better meet our why when we think about the way people experience evaluations in school year 24-25. We know that a lot of training needs to be in place to support people for these large shifts. This training exists on a continuum from technical, how do you use a new electronic platform? How do you understand what a new rubric for those who are impacted means and how to use it? What are the deadlines and timelines and some of the more traditional questions that we get each year to support folks through? All the way to be more adaptive, thinking about how can you support your team members and your teams and yourself through some of these changes. Some people will be impacted by more change than others. Wanting to lean into how are we continuing to build muscle for more substantive, actionable feedback. Whether or not we were changing any of our district leader evaluation forms, we were hearing from folks anecdotally and again more formally since 21-22 that the way supervisors think they're giving feedback and the way that their direct reports are receiving the quality of that feedback is sometimes a bit dissonant. And people leaders have said they want more training and support. So there's some things, again, in this more adaptive space that we understand more professional learning needs to be available. This does mean that the type of training and support my team is preparing for ranges from asynchronous self-service modules, likely more in that technical space to meet the need of folks, and then seeing where it may be more of an investment of time and energy, but we understand that going a bit deeper to support more adaptive learning is needed. We're excited to lean into some of the current success that we have had when we think about the way we have invested over the last several years in more high quality experiences for our qualified observers around professional learning and calibration. This is just one example here where, again, we build for our qualified observers from knowing the rubric, collecting evidence, self-assessing, and reflecting on different kinds of bias that research shows can show up for evaluators, aligning evidence, using that to determine a rating, and providing effective feedback. So we have done this with school leaders. We continue to iterate in a continuous calibration professional learning cycle for school leaders. And we're now going to be wrapping some of those good practices into the learning for our district leaders as we roll out this updated evaluation. There are some numbers there for you, but just want to say our net promoter score is very high. When we think about for new qualified observers and for continuing calibration of current observers that we're circling back with. And we want to build again on the good practices for what our district leaders will experience. We're also working with a vendor who's worked across the country with other LEAs and state Department of Education, departments of education to have a reflective practice rubric. This is not to evaluate evaluators, but it is to be a tool for them to self-assess the quality of the feedback and how they're preparing for feedback conversations. We want to have more tools available for folks so that they can better equip themselves to show up, prepare for, and follow through on those conversations with their staff. And to close us out, thank you for your time. Again, it's been a lot of work, really good work that we're really excited about. And it's going to mean a lot of change for folks, and that can be challenging. It's also a step in the right direction in responding to feedback that we have heard. But again, we have our first look. We're in the midst of our rubric pilot for the district leader evaluation, as well as that 360 feedback survey field test. In June, we're going to be analyzing a lot of the information that is coming to us, so that in July, we're finishing that buildup of internal training and capacity building. So my team, our colleagues that are in system learning and development and in OIT are ready to help us help others, where we are getting them ready to use new systems or to be ready to implement and engage in a new evaluation. We will be confirming the employee groups that folks are aware ahead of the start of the school year, how they will be evaluated and where they may be falling in this kind of rolling basis of turning on the lights for the updated evaluation for district leaders. Thank you for your time. If there's any questions, I'm happy if there's time that allows now or any follow-up afterward.
I will open the floor to my colleagues. Does anyone have any questions?
I put 2 in the chat. I mean, because of time, maybe I can talk to you about this later, Jesse.
Sure.
Because I know we're pushing the clock. But I guess they were both in the addendum.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to follow up. And for other folks of interest, in the appendix, we included additional detail. And the survey was a feedback survey about experience, and we included a net promoter score as a specific type of question, framed as if you would recommend the training to somebody else. There were other questions we wanted to gather feedback on in addition. So that's where you see the iReady data is reflecting some of the trends with student learning objectives, as we're looking at, we don't have this year's data yet, but sharing with the team how we've seen some trends in previous years or last year.
Yeah, I already had a lot of red, which didn't look good. So I guess you can explain to me why it looks so bad. And the other thing is, if you have an NPS of 36 and the survey says 90% in terms of they love it, how do they mesh and what's the disconnect?
Yeah, some of it comes down to how a net promoter score is calculated. The idea is that you are taking the people who really would promote you. They're not even just like a 5 or better. They're like what is it? I think it's like a 10 or a 9, maybe an 8 as well. And you're subtracting people who are like a 5 or 6 or below. And actually anything above a 0 is starting to be in like a good direction. It's just the way that metric looks. It is true, however, that our new qualified observers give us much higher scores than our more veteran observers who we're circling back with. But I'm happy to follow up on any email on those. And then for iReady, just to say we do see more differentiation in SLO results on the iReady, or when iReady is the measure for how our students are learning, than we see for some of the other assessments, which is what that slide is showing. But I'm happy to follow up on any other questions folks may have.
Mohammed?
Appreciate it. Jesse, quick question, and this maybe can come back to me another time. With regards to the beta, the pilot, and the field test, it's clear that we're doing a lot to get feedback and working towards creating ownership of the platform prior to us completely rolling it out. I'm really interested in understanding, when we receive that feedback, how malleable the platform has been for us to really create those nuanced, nimble changes that are needed that staff may be requesting. So if we can get some information around that, that would be amazing. I do appreciate the effort that's being made to create that ownership, even the name itself. That was definitely a nice touch. But being able to see how the platform has been responsive to our needs now would be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I will certainly follow up over email as a quick kind of a highlight, headline response to that. Thus far, we have not had the vendor tell us, and they have not been able yet to deliver on any adjustment that we've asked for. I think we benefit greatly that we procured a product that is used for district evaluations, and they also are the vendor and the platform in Prince George's County. And so we have the same team of folks who helped with that rollout and build working with us. And so there are some things it is just designed to do and understand like what it takes in, for example, a teacher or principal evaluation, that some of the other platforms that are more for like a corporate world, I think it would have been much more challenging. And so I appreciate that we were able to invest in and partner with this vendor, but I can be more specific and follow up.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
You're muted. Muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. We have one more presentation, the supplemental appropriation for the ERP, implementation and change management.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. This is Mary Ann Cox, the Deputy Chief Financial Officer for City Schools, and I'm going to be presenting information on this supplemental appropriation along with Courtney Desabay, the Executive Director for Financial Systems and Operations in Finance. So I'm going to share my screen, and if everything works. Okay, do you see the screen? That has the agenda item title?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Okay, this is a request a request board approval of an FY 2024 supplemental appropriation in the amount of $10 million related to the transfer from general fund assigned fund balance to the capital projects fund for the ERP implementation change management project. So a little background on how this all develops. Please remember that the chief executive officer is the board's designee to place items in the general fund assigned fund balance. She has the authority to do that and may place items there, projects, once they meet certain accounting criteria. They must also meet the certain accounting criteria. But once the items are in the general fund assigned fund balance, it requires board approval to actually use that funding because this will effectively allow one of our funds to increase their appropriation for the year and hence their budget. So that requires board approval. So please remember that this is a supplemental appropriation for the Capital Projects Fund. The ERP implementation change management project is considered a capital asset, which will be depreciated per accounting rules over its useful life. So it meets the criteria for a capitalized asset, which means it has a useful life greater than 1 year and a per unit cost greater than $5,000 per unit. So this is essentially an accounting mechanism that has been board approved that allows us, the city schools, to increase appropriations while providing the funding to do so for one of our entities. So this request relates to using the balance of $10 million, which was included in the FY 2023 general fund assigned fund balance for this specific project. And then we will utilize this same $10 million over multiple years because remember, it's going to the Capital Projects Fund and they may expend their monies over multiple years because they're generally very large projects. So they have, different rules, whereas the general fund has a 1-year life. So that is the request that we are going to make. And I'm going to go to the next screen that will talk about the programmatic request for the $10 million and how it's split out. And Courtney Desabay will discuss these items.
Thank you, Marianne. So the items that we've included here, and just to reiterate a little bit of what Marianne outlined, we have our ERP, our AMP account set up in the capital account, so it's stretched over multiple years. There are items that when we did the initial draw of about 36 million, We had some items that were implementation costs, some items are, recurring costs, annual fees, et cetera. So we've always tried as much as possible using that capital account to account for as much of the cost as we can. So just to be clear, this request is not because, we're running out of money in that funding stream. We still have approximately 16 million of the original account available, and there's still going to be costs attributed to those dollars that are in there. So we're using this mechanism right now really for some of the items that we had preliminary costs on that we now have more concrete figures to move some of the funding associated with those items into that capital account. So again, we'll have that funding available over the next few years for these items. So some of the things that we have highlighted here are LMS. You'll see that it's on the ops procurement calendar today. Our PMS, which is already in place, Splash BI, which is related to data archiving, the physical clocks related to the time clocks for phase 3 for UKG. We have some change orders for reports and consultation fees, as well as we're going to be implementing now somewhat forcibly some UI changes, what are being called Redwood changes for Fusion. So Oracle is making some updates to the user interface, which is going to involve some changes on our end as well. So those are the items that we have listed here specifically for reference. Do we have any questions?
Thank you so much for the overview. I will open the floor for questions from my colleagues, Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Mohammed.
None here. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mohammed, any questions? None from me.
None for me. I appreciate it. Very clear.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As a matter of record, Dr. Jenkins, is anyone signed up for public comment?
We do not have any public comments.
Thank you so much. We can transition to procurement.
Hi, good morning. My name is Catherine Kamenecki, and I'm a contracts administrator in procurement, and I will be presenting the procurement agenda for ops today. The first item we have is item 12.1, the Chief Academic Officer, in partnership with the Chief Human Capital Officer and the Chief Information Technology Officer, request the board's approval of a contract with Infrastructure, Inc. For the implementation and technical assistance to support the district's launch of Canvas and KickUp learning management systems, the LMS solutions. The contract term is July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2028. And the estimated total contract amount is $4,655,000.
Are there any questions for Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Mohammed?
None here. Thank you.
Commissioner Mohammed?
Sorry, it was on mute.
Oh, no worries.
Oh my goodness.
Any questions?
None here. Sorry.
We can move forward.
Okay, 1 second. I apologize. I was shuffling my papers to get organized, and I shuffled them too much. So you have to just bear with me for 1 moment. I apologize for the holdup. The next item is item 13.1. This is a piggyback contract and a contract increase for Cloverland Farms Dairy. The CFO requests the board's approval to increase the contract amount with Cloverland Farms Dairy to provide and deliver pasteurized milk, dairy products, and juices to city schools cafeterias. And this is an increase of the estimated annual amount from $3 million to an increase of $3.8 million, which is an increase of $800,000. And the contract term is July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. And this contract has 2 remaining one-year renewal options, but you will note that a later item is a shift to a new contract. So we won't be renewing this one, but we are increasing it through the end of this term.
Do you not have any questions, Commissioner Mohammed, Commissioner Reed?
Yeah, I'd just like to be educated. We have the Cloverland coming up. So we're looking at that now. And then later in the grouping, you have Dairy Maid. When you look at
Yes.
when you look at Cloverland and Dairy Maid, basically they're roughly like the same type of contract, the same amount in terms of contract. But how do we differentiate or make a distinction? How do we choose to use Dairy Maid, or how do we choose to use Cloverland? Are there cost factors? Are there control factors? What's the distinctions between the two?
Food and nutrition.
Good afternoon, Monique Roll for Food Nutrition Services. So one of the determining factors is actually to ensure that we have product. There has been supply chain disruptions since October of last year with the paper that's needed for milk and also juice products. And since then, we have had to make some shifts, but to ensure that we have the quantity of products in a timely fashion for the schools, we are making a shift to a new vendor. In addition, the department is moving towards a more electronic process that would help with billing. So that's another determining factor for the switch to the new vendor.
Okay, so Dairy Maid's new.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, item 13.2, the CFO requests the board's approval of a contract with the City of Baltimore to provide printing and copying services to all city schools. The contract term is July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2028, and this includes 2 one-year renewal options, and the estimated annual amount of this contract is $435,000.
My apologies, I was muted. I do not have any questions. Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Mohammed?
None here. Thank you.
Okay.
None here.
Item 13.3, the CFO requests the board's approval to contract with Dairy Maid Dairy to provide and deliver pasteurized milk, dairy products, and juices to city schools cafeterias. The estimated annual contract amount is $4.5 million. The term of the contract is July 1, 2024 through July 31st of 2025, and this includes 2 two-year renewal options.
Nothing.
I don't
None
either.
here.
No questions. Thank you. We can move forward.
The next item is section 14.1, and these are the software maintenance and support renewals, and these are sole source products. The Chief Information Technology Officer requests the board's approval to renew the following one-year software maintenance and support services contracts at a total of $7,225,000, and the contract term is July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025, and this is a number of multiple vendors.
I do not have any questions. Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Sad. Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Mohammed?
I'm good here.
Just an academic question. I guess Chief Tommy can get to me and or us later, but how do we decide to use sole source versus piggyback? Because I saw in one of the write-ups sole source and piggyback. So I know piggyback, we're basically piggybacking with another entity.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, the short version, Commissioner, is that whenever someone else has already negotiated a good contract and we can piggyback on it, we prefer to do that because that typically saves us money, saves us work, paperwork, everything. But sometimes we run into a vendor that they don't have a competitor in their area that will meet all of our needs. So we have to sole source to that one vendor, and it takes a long time typically to get it in place. And then once we get it in place, we try to hold on to it. We still look at other vendors, each period, but if we have it, we just try not to lose it, because we lose so much time sometimes when we, when we have to go through all the process to get, another one in place.
So piggyback may not save you more money, but it saves you time and effort in your shop.
Yeah, it saves tons of time and effort. And
Okay.
most of the time, it saves us money.
Okay.
The sole source, we won't go sole source if we can find that product on a piggyback, because we'll go that way, unless it's just a huge difference. If it's, a couple percentage, then it's worth the time and money, because, contracting, procurement, everybody just, the board with board letters. But that's we'll typically go piggyback preferably.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Item 14.2, and these are the renewals that are the piggyback contracts. The Chief Information Technology Officer requests the board's approval to renew the following software maintenance and support services piggyback contracts at a total of $2,630,000. And for the most part, the term is July 1, 24 through June 30th, 25, but there are some that the renewal period varies, so they've been identified.
I do not have anything. Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Muhammad.
Nothing. Thank you.
Right, item 15.1, the Chief Operating
All right,
Officer.
So, I think that's when the change is gonna be.
Okay. There you go.
The COO requests the board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with Chilmark Corporation in the amount of $444,736. And this contract provides elevator replacement services at Gardenville Elementary School.
No questions.
None here.
Item
Commissioner
15.
Reed?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, 1502.
Item 15.2, the Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with BMC Services in the total amount of $1,650,880. And this contract provides health suite renovation services at Abbotston Building, Gwens Falls Elementary School, Rosemount Pre-K to 8 School, and Mount Royal Elementary Middle School.
No question. Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Muhammad.
None here.
None.
Item 15.3, the Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with Conquest Solutions LLC in the total amount of $2,045,142. The contract provides health suite renovation services at Franklin Square Pre-K to 8 School, Moravia Park Upper Building, Hazelwood Pre-K to 8, and Garrett Heights Pre-K to 8 schools.
No questions. Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Muhammad.
Not.
Item
None here.
15. Item 15.4, the Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with St. Mary's Roofing and Home Improvement in the amount of $1,464,683. And this contract is to provide roof replacement services at Mount Washington School.
No questions.
None.
Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Muhammad.
None.
None.
Moving on to section 18, the Chief Legal Officer. The Chief Legal Officer requests the board's approval to increase the contract amount and extend the contract term for its agreement with outside counsel at Whitford, Taylor, and Preston LLP. And this is an increase of $775,000 and extends the contract through June 30th, 2025, or until the litigation is completed.
No questions.
May I have a question?
Commissioner.
I
Oh, go
have a
ahead.
question, Madam Chair. Can can in executive session, can the CLO let the board know what the aggregate amount of those contracts are in terms of outsourcing versus internal spending? Because I know it's been pretty busy for him in terms of litigations and other things, but maybe the board can have a total number in terms of what the total spend is.
Absolutely happy to do that, Commissioner Reed.
Yeah, we can do that. Maybe you want to do that in executive session versus on the phone.
We'll find out the best way to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Commissioner Mohammed?
None here. Thank you.
Got it.
Okay. The last item is Chief of Schools, Section 19.1. The interim Chief of Schools requests the board's approval of a contract with Rydell All-American to provide sports equipment reconditioning and replacement services. The estimated annual contract amount is $750,000, and the contract term is May 29th, 2024 through January 19th, 2025, and this includes 3 one-year renewal options.
No questions. Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Mohammed?
None.
None here.
Okay. I think that is it for us. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Sorry, I apologize. The page didn't fit earlier.
No worries. I didn't even have my agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for making time to attend the Operations Committee today. On those items for follow-up, I'm hopeful that staff was able to capture that so that we can close the loop on those items before our next meeting time. You all have a great day. This is end of call.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one,
Thank
guys.
you.
Yep.